programs on initiatives that we started this last year. And we'll just kind of keep it tight, and if we got more questions, we can ask them later. But let's keep moving. Let's start, I believe, the first one, Representative Amerson was particularly interested in.
The Junior ROTC program.
Yes. If I recall, this was the program we were to put one in every congressional district. Was that right?
This is augmenting the federal ROTC program.
Yeah, in White County particularly.
Okay. So,
because I do know they wanted, last year, they wanted to start.
They all get
working with them. I don't know if they've been approved yet, but that's what these funds do, is they start the program and then we augment them with federal funds the next year. And I can check the status of that for you.
So we appropriated $780,000. Was that for 13?
Madam Chair, it is currently, per the last board, I believe it was 8 that are actually funded, and there are others that are
We got Lumpkin County up there in my area is already funded.
And what happened to the other 5?
They have not completed their application. This was the first year. There were some, my understanding from talking to the program managers, there were some transition issues. This program establishes a junior ROTC program within a school, and then the following year it rolls into federal funding, assuming that they support it. There were some schools, we understand, that had some concern that it wouldn't roll into the federal funding and that they would be left having to make a difficult decision about cutting the program or
Well,
not. And so,
let me explain my hard interest in this. Is that the U.S. Army has told North Georgia College and State University in Dahlonega that they, in a sense, want them to double the cadet corps. They have slightly over 600 cadets now. By 2013, they wanted to be at over 1,000, about 1,100. And the feeder coming out of Lumpkin County Junior is great for North Georgia. And we'll anticipate the same kind of response coming out of White County. So that generally, that's one reason that I have a big interest in this.
I'm just curious, there are other schools, my son was in JROTC back in the, my goodness, 80s. And so I guess schools have independently of this federal new initiative had those. And so there's several in the state that he was high school.
and I'll have to get you some detail, but yes, junior ROTC has been throughout the state. It just hasn't been through all of the schools. I don't actually know, and it's generally federally supported in most instances, except for the first year or so. I don't actually know why we didn't have them in the last several years. I know that we have them because that's where the data came from. The dropout rate of the
It's a
junior
great
ROTC
tool
programs
for
is absolutely low.
This was to create more. In essence, we've always been growing the program for the last 3 decades in the state. It's just that this was to speed up the process of it because it was very limited from the feds.
I want to clarify. Let me clarify the numbers a little bit here. So, $780,000 for 13. We fund to date. So it sounds like there's $300,000 we need to get in. We need to redirect in the 08.
It is slightly less than that, and it either will be redirected or we may take another round to the board. And I will tell you that there is still time to not do that. If the guidance from the General Assembly and the governor is to say, don't do round 2, we can hold off.
Well, what I would prefer to do, given the timing, because it would be for this year, is to redirect that $300,000 before our conference committee makes and use it for some things we need, and then for the next school year they can be a part of that round. Now, when you say a round, are we funding a new one every year, or is that money required every year as support?
The startup money is required in the first year. After they have the program up and running, then the federal government, my understanding, will take over.
So, is there $780 in the 09 budget?
Yes.
So there's a little money there too.
That's the amount.
So it ought to be
it's a continuation number.
only $300,000 in the 09 budget, and the rest of that might could go to your math mentor. Is that right?
Well, I
thought it was more than 780 for all 13, wasn't it?
whatever.
junior R.
Let's.
What I would recommend, if I may, Madam Chair,
Okay.
I'm sorry I don't have the numbers right here, but we know that we didn't have full utilization in the first round, even though we had a lot of interest. And we also know that it's very effective in dropout prevention.
Right.
What we would recommend is that we continue the baseline at the level of participation this year. In other words, those 8 schools, that amount, we should continue in next year. So if it's 300 that's left over because we haven't actually allocated, we would recommend that be the amount that we would reduce in next year's budget in 09.
So the next year's.
Well, we'd take 300 out of the 08, and then we would leave 300 in the 09, right, for the 4 that need to be funded, and then take the rest to redirect to something else.
Madam Chair, the thing is, we want more than one.
Well, but now that's a policy decision, though. Do we really want to be funding one more every year? I mean, I think the program as originally suggested us that we discussed that we would put 1 in every congressional. We can have that discussion, but we need to have it real darn quick. But I mean, I'd probably say, given the reduction in the revenue estimate, that I might not be inclined to start a new program.
At least if we can finish that first one.
Oh, well, absolutely. We would leave that. Would you double check on those numbers and get back to me like in about
When
an
you're talking
hour?
about finishing the first round, are you talking about the 5 congressional districts that don't have one around
Right,
them
exactly.
to get theirs going?
Continuing those in the 09 so we can complete
Get them up
the
So that would-
first cycle.
So that would be
All
about
right.
300,000 that we didn't need in 09.
Yeah, be 300 in the 08, and then it would be
Take 300 out of the
480 in the 09. Good thing. All right.
Wait a minute.
That's what it took.
It took 480 to get the 8,
Right.
and there's 5 left. So in 09, we'll only need enough for the 5 that's left.
That's right.
Which is 300.
That's right. That's what I meant.
All right.
All right. Good.
But I did want to mention, though, that I think the expectation was that the baseline funding would continue. The number of schools that are anticipating applying next year is larger than the 3 or 4 that didn't apply this year, when we talked about right here.
But I
think
What we're saying right now is, due to the budget problems, is that we suspend
absolutely
for 1
I
year.
understand.
Well, and I think
And
I'd
then
like
come
to
back.
actually talk to the governor's office and us have this. I don't believe it was ever an intention that it would be, 13 a year.
Annual.
well,
And then 26 after 2 years. I don't think there's that many that exist. Probably. About, I don't know, maybe there are. But I would like to get.
There's a limit. The federal government is legal.
I thought that's right.
Right.
They are.
That's right.
They
As a
are.
matter of fact, for those of us who led school systems and had active ROTC programs, every time you opened a high school, it was sometimes trouble to get them because there were certain numbers
Right.
allotted for each state.
That's right.
A couple of times, we literally had to get an allotment or an ROTC unit out of a New England state. They'd let us shift it from one state to the other. That was kind of rare, but they've got their own limits on the number of programs.
We added.
Why don't we get that information on what's the limit and what's right? I mean, you want to know that. And then I don't have a problem after this year if there's a couple schools and we can find space with the feds. If there's truly an area of the state, then let's do them, but let's do it on an Wait, let's just stop. Let's do it on an exception basis where there's a need. All right. Representative Maxwell.
We tried last year to get one. All we got to get hold of what the people in Washington. I talked to Washington Select about that. It's just not something that opens the door.
I'd almost be inclined to make it a competitive grant thing where, if there's 10 that want it, let's see who wants it that bad and needs it and can justify it as an area of the state where it really would make a difference.
Well, I agree with you in concept, except that the university system has designated North Georgia College and State University as a military college of Georgia.
Right, you're right.
And the Department of the Army recognizes it as one of 6 essential schools in the whole United
Wait,
States.
let's have one conversation.
Feeder schools.
Yes, you're right. Well, let's get the data on
Okay.
what's the capacity. Let's also keep in mind, were you inundated with applications?
We do have a number of applications, actually, and what we were told initially was there was some reservation about whether this was going to be effective or not, meaning will the feds pick it up? And that was the basis for some of the school systems that had showed tremendous interest early on not coming in. But
So let's find out what's the capacity and what's the interest. How many were interested that didn't get funded, and maybe you want to make that your project for next year. And I'm serious, particularly because of the North Georgia College. Let's look at this.
Okay.
And I think that. All right. Can we move to number 2? All right. Let's move to number 2. $750,000 for DOE to provide online tutorial services statewide. We'd like an update.
Update is that after sorting through the requirements of what that budget item was identified for, we developed after working with the Department of Administrative Services, we were notified we had to put this out for bid. We put this out for bid with an RFP. It's just now really going out, because once we worked through the requirements of the platform and began to talk with, have pre-bid conferences with possible providers for this, we realized that there was one idea of intending it to go on a statewide platform that's already in place. But then when our team looked at it, and when the superintendent and board looked at it, they preferred it to be a general platform available for many different sources rather than the one source. So we're recasting the bid, and it'll go out as we speak. It could go out in the next week, but it won't be in. This means that it won't be available for this school year.
So one question, then I'll open it up. Does that mean we have $750,000 I need to go down to conference committee and tell them is back on the table for 08?
Well, Madam Chair, what it means is that if this goes out for bid, we could be entering into a contract in the next month, which would be obligating us to something before the end of the fiscal year. So again, we do understand the fiscal environment has changed.
Yeah.
I think we have an opportunity to make changes, but we would need to know timing-wise. If we need to hold something,
That's on.
we need to know that we shouldn't obligate. It is not currently obligated,
Nope.
but it could be in the next several weeks, and so we would
The bid could be
communicate
held
closely
at
with
this
you.
point, and based on what I'm hearing in this room, we're not going to release the bid at this point.
And that's not yet a decision on the 09 budget. There's money sitting there that
Correct.
we don't need it till next year at this point, I would think.
Well,
So
we would have, if the bid had come back, what we would have done is made this available for any kind of summer remedial work and that kind of issue. There's a lot of summer remedial programs, K-12, that go on, and so we would have made it
Got
available
it.
for them. So, in the spirit of full disclosure, that's what we would have done, but we certainly realize that if the decision is made to pull these funds back, we'll just hold off on the bid.
questions?
Well, we haven't
Go
done
ahead,
anything
question.
yet.
Go ahead.
We're not sure even, this is to assist students with remedial efforts. Now, we have other remedial efforts going on in context of our other programs.
Yes, we do.
So this will be an additional $750,000 program that we put money in for 08 has been spent. We haven't obligated funds for 09, just like that, right?
Yes.
This will be a one-time obligation of $750,000
Every year.
every year.
It would be a continuing obligation.
I think, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, the way I try to look at these things is if this were, since this is just getting started, if this were not a program that had been contemplated last year, is this something we would suggest to start as a new program in the 2009 budget given our fiscal situation? Would I be raising my hand and saying, I recommend this new $750,000 a year program be added this year in light of the other budget constraints? And it doesn't seem like it's something we would add this year.
Right. Other thoughts? I wanted to ask Herb, what do you think?
I agree with what we're doing. I mean, I'm sure that the department has a much more global view of the possible use of this than I do.
I mean, it sounded interesting to me last year.
From a budget perspective, how can you justify that in light of other priorities?
That's good. All right, well, I think we got that. All right, number 3, $4 million for grants for children in foster care. These are the residential.
This is the residential treatment centers, and we recommended this amount. This was the amount that was put in the 08 budget. We have expended about a third of those funds at this point, and we have the grants out on the, we're receiving the grants. Tomorrow's the deadline. What we found with Senate Bill 618 and the funding that came through with Senate Bill 618 is that these residential treatment centers were being funded through DHR in a bundled package, of which they were receiving funds for 365 days a year because these are residential students. And they were receiving so many dollars a day for 365 days. Well, when this went to QBE, they're only being funded for 180 days. And there was a shortfall in the funds because they're only the state portion of the funds that they earn. In Senate Bill 618, the local system is held harmless from their funds. So the purpose of the grant was to offset cost. What we found is some of our residential treatment centers could, these were very close to being an adequate amount of funds. But for some of them that had some more of the severe cases that they were working with, where the students require a lot of extra cost, the funding wasn't, they really had a shortfall in their funding. And we're utilizing these grants. We've determined now that which schools are going to need the extra funds, and they've applied, and on a competitive basis we'll award these $4 million. Is it enough? I'm not sure, but we haven't made a larger recommendation in 09 because we had talked with OPB and agreed that we were going to do a year of actuals to decide what the amount would be in this. I do ask the committee to consider that these funds are very necessary, and I really believe these treatment centers are providing the right services for these students, and they do need these funds. We're really trying to keep them down and be realistic about it. We don't want to come back and ask for, $8 more million or some, which was originally thought that this was going to be a $10 to $12 million cost. So.
Can I say something? How many children are we talking about?
About 1,900 now.
That's fewer than last year.
No, I think we said 17. It's more.
More.
We had 1,700. It's closer to 1,900 because we identified 6 extra centers that were really part of DJJ that we weren't aware of.
No, this is above
and
QBE funding. They're getting QBE
they're in
funding
36
now.
different treatment centers, and it affects 41 systems now.
So, okay. Representative.
My question is, and it's purely informational for coordination, is if I remember correctly, all of the teachers have to be certified now. And so, but they are only going to be there 5 days a week. So how do you take care of these people over the weekend?
They get other funds, Representative Amerson. Yeah. They get the educational costs.
Yeah, DHR.
Right. They get somewhere around $200 a day for these students, but there were no educational funds in there. So DHR, starting about 14, 15 years ago, started putting in an additional $30 or $40 a day for educational expenses. And of course, those were backed out when they unbundled the funds last year. So they're still getting the cost for the residential. We don't pay for any of those. We only pay for educational costs. Furthermore, in 2 or 3 of our centers, they didn't have any educational staff providing educational services. We were able to go to the state board and get a release on the one course requirement for our virtual school, and we have 3 of our schools that are educating their students through our virtual school, and that was a cost that the state board absorbed, of course. And so we're doing everything we can to support these. Furthermore, you alluded to the NCLB requirements for highly qualified teachers, and many of these systems had to go out and rehire and hire certified, qualified teachers, which is a good thing, but it was an unanticipated cost.
So
Madam
just,
Chair?
yes. Yes.
Let me make sure I understand this now. We've expended 1/3 of these funds so far.
Roughly.
We're 3/4 way through the school year.
Now, though, what happened is the state board, we were developing the rule to, first of all, at the beginning of the year, their FTE funds, of course, come to them in monthly payments, and they were making the payments. We were making the payments. The funds were keeping up, and the shortfalls come later in the year when they've expended their state FTE funds. We put the new state board rule into place that went into effect last month. They're applying for their grants. We're getting the grants in today, and we'll start to expend those funds through the June payments. March, April, May, June, or April, May, June, we'll expend the grant funds to make up for the shortfall. This is how we could really tell where the shortfall was going to come, which treatment centers were really experiencing the shortfall.
Okay, I think I do understand. I think I can put it in. Let me put it. I think I can put it in perspective. Is every school, every one of these treatment centers, going to receive some portion of this?
They might.
Probably.
No, or is every?
But some
they
won't.
might.
Okay,
Some
so
won't.
it is not true to say everyone. So some
It's
will receive none of this. So what this is that the state is already paying for their residential facility to feed them, to house them, that kind of thing, right? Out of a different bucket. Then the state is paying 100% of the QBE, which with most school systems we sort of split on an 80-20, the 20's the 5 mil share, right? We're paying the 100%. So we're paying the 5 mil share, that's the 20, we're paying the 80. What they're not receiving is a penny from a local school system. That's what this is. So I just calculated it out. I said, oh, how much is it? $4 million, $11,000. I divided it by 1,900 students, and I came up to about $2,100 per kid. That's what this represents. What concerns me is when you say, well, some don't need it and some aren't going to get it. How could we say that none of them should get some additional funding?
There may be, and that's what we were going to have to come back and this was our discussion last year with the committee and with OPB. What we may have to do is come in the 09 supplemental with a request if we see we're really short. Some school systems have indeed, through agreement, provided extra funds to some of these districts, and I do need to speak to the generosity of a lot of the school systems, is they went ahead and put certified teachers there and picked up the cost themselves. So it hasn't been totally revenue neutral for the local systems. Some of these,
but by law we said we would hold them.
Right, and some of these centers have students that are regularly funded students. They're not special needs students. They're adjudicated students, but they're not special needs. Some of these, though, have what we call a Category 4 or Category 5 student. They're extremely expensive students. Those are where we see we're going to be making some payments, because an FTE for one of those students can cost $15,000, $20,000 or above, whereas a normal student, it doesn't cost it nearly that.
But that, let's say, child that had no special needs is still only receiving the 100% of QBE in general. So what I guess I'd want to know, if I really wanted to know if this is the right amount, is which ones, I think there were 30 of them or so?
I think this is on the low side. I mean, it is on the low side.
Of the 30 or however many there are, where are the school systems going above and beyond and helping out? And I realize these kids don't necessarily come from that school system, but some are just being generous. Which ones aren't getting any? And I think it ought to be put in perspective that they're not getting anything other than the 100% of QBE. Right. And my guess is most of us here say that's not adequate funding. It's hard for me to believe that 2,000 or 2,100 average for these kids is enough, given that
it's probably not. But we didn't want to. We couldn't make a recommendation this year because we don't have the actuals.
But we have more of a responsibility to these kids than probably any other kid in the state, because they're state kids. They don't have anybody that cares about them.
They're under state guardianship.
So does someone here want to take that on and work with the department and collect that information and get back with us? And I don't mean today or tomorrow, but I mean in the off season. Bob, how about you?
I'll do it.
And I'll be glad to, we do have
Just
a lot
work
of
with
data.
them, and I don't mean you do the work.
I know.
But if you heard, put it sort of in context, the questions we want answered, and then just, not a big deal, but if you'll work with Bob to just collect that information.
We already have it broken down by school.
Okay. Where the local
We're
systems
tracking
are
it by
helping, and
student. We do know exactly
Okay.
where it's going, and I'll be glad, I'll sit down with
he didn't have time to,
bring you
do
all
it,
that
but
information, Dr.
thank you. All right, let's go to the next one. $1,250,000 for college entrance exams for students who meet eligibility requirements. This was the program last year. I think the new program, if you jump over several hoops, you get a little rebate. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
The usage at this point in time is low, and we're talking about the state contributing about $43 for either ACT or SAT test, assuming that students have taken the prerequisite courses and have shown that they are actually interested in college. And the intent was to try and get students to actually, right, this is college.
Yeah.
To get the students to actually, we have so many students that just take the SAT, and sometimes their results show it. So we're trying to get out in front of it and say, look, if you're going to take the SAT or thinking about the SAT, we'll pay for it, or please supplement it. It's almost full payment. But we want you to do certain things, like make sure you've taken the prerequisite math courses, that you've talked to a counselor who's helped you to understand that there is an SAT online that you can do practice, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, at least so far, and it may be, this is the first year, it may be that a lot of kids want to take the test later in the year, that may be part of it. But so far, a lot of kids are not making advantage of the opportunity.
Any idea?
$43 is not incenting them to go to meet with their counselor and say...
How many have we heard from?
I mean, yeah.
I mean, no, it's not many. I want a number.
I would say the dollar amount is less than $10,000, whatever that equates to.
That's all we've spent.
So 10,000 divided by, we'll use the little number just to be,
Got over
333. So say 350 have done it. And how were students supposed to learn about this?
Through their guidance counselors, through, I guess, the Georgia 411. There were multiple ways of trying to communicate it, but that was one of the concerns, was that this is the first, it is the first year of the program.
Yeah, but I would contend that kids who are proactive enough to go through those steps,
I've already done it.
might not be incentivized for $40-some to go through the process of getting
Yeah.
it. What's the mechanism to get
That's
this?
1.2 million.
They have to go through, I believe it was the guidance counselor, but I remember the discussions, but they had to go through some kind of gatekeeper. I believe it was the guidance counselor who had to attest that they had taken the right courses and that they had practiced online, utilized what the state was providing in order to prepare for the
And
test.
then you take that and
Wow.
how does the,
So we get taken.
And then we get the certification or the verification that they've met the qualifications, and then we pay college, we would arrange to pay college for it.
So it's cost us
Or the other
$35 and
cities.
send it back 43.
yeah, that's the, administratively, there's a lot of process there.
There's a fair amount of process.
Wait, let's do one decision. Of course, to be fair, this was not meant to be a cost savings. This was meant to incentivize students to better prepare to have
Right.
higher test scores. Let me just ask her a question.
I took the SAT, yes ma'am, but nobody gave me any money back.
I mean, do kids know about it? Do you see that number going up? What do you think?
Well, a little, sure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's clearly one of those things, like Stuart was saying, it's the first year of the program.
Right.
And the word gets out. Kid, all we're taking in high school is for a couple of kids saying, hey, I got a $43 check back. You can go do it too. So just human nature, it'll grow some. But again, $43 is,
No.
if you got to jump through that many hoops to get $43, there are a lot of folks that will follow you.
I should know because I've had a whole lot of, my kids have taken a lot of this in the last couple of years.
What'd you get back?
No, we didn't. I know my daughter didn't. Unless I deduct it from her account and tell her she better do it. But to be honest, I forgot about it. I didn't think to do it. But is that the full cost?
No.
What's the full cost?
85, is that right?
It's about half.
I mean, I get,
It's
if we're going to
more
have a
than-
program,
I think it's the full, close to the full cost of the ACT, but not the SAT.
Right.
so if you made it full cost and you means tested it, or, I mean, I'm just trying to think if you did something to make it targeted to help with the goal, what do you think?
Full cost is probably, that's an incentive.
I mean, do we want
And
people to
y'all
do this or
can
not?
judge that by the fact that you pay for AP tests, remember? You pay for one for
Right.
everybody, and then an additional one for youngsters who qualify on the
I need to
basis of
make
free
that change.
reduced price lunch. So maybe if you did this one for a youngster who qualifies for free reduced price lunch and paid the whole thing, it would probably come closer to being an attractive incentive.
Yeah, most parents
high
and
school
students aren't
students.
Well, what if we tried it as a one-year test? We'll pay for it all if you jump through all the hoops. I mean, what do you think?
And qualify for free lunch or for everybody. Now, if you do it for everybody, you may,
Well,
you may not have enough money there.
Madam Chair, what we could...
How
what
do you
we could
prove
for
mean
you,
tested so?
if I may recommend is that it does pay for close to the full cost, I believe, of the ACT.
Right.
So that
But
does
this
give
is
us
not
a
an
full
ACT
year.
state, so it doesn't,
It
I mean,
hasn't
really.
been a full year, and again, I don't actually know when kids are intending. They can take the SAT 4 times in the year. Maybe it's early in the year, and most kids take it.
In fact, why means test it? Why not benchmark it to something like performance? It's the kids who are struggling more, right, that you want, I don't know.
You do, but I mean, you've got your calculator, divide $85 into
Yeah.
1.25 million.
No, I'm thinking means tested,
Well,
though. Or I'm thinking of not necessarily means tested. I'm saying narrow it to whatever criteria makes sense. What's the target group of kids that we need to do this? Right?
I think it's, this goes back a few years to my old years as a high school principal, but I think that the target group for this one is youngsters who heretofore had taken the SAT without the requisite courses they needed to really be prepared for it. That's the target group. The youngsters who are actually taking all the college prep courses,
Yeah.
and the AP courses and that sort of thing, they're already doing that. So if the idea is to incentivize those youngsters who might be taking the SAT but haven't done the coursework,
Right.
that's the group you're heading to.
Okay.
That's why those requirements are out.
A free $85 SAT is not going to incentivize course selections for kids. It might incentivize kids to study and take one SAT prep test, but it's not going to incentivize course selection. There's no way to make that case that.
Well, if you have further thoughts, let me know. And well, I think after this, if we're gonna make a change, we'll make it real quick. But if we're not gonna make a change, you could always scale it back for a year and come up with something. But I think the goal is good. But there needs to be a way to narrow it up, target it, and clearly $30, $40 is just not gonna do it. And I'd be interested to see if there's a way to narrow it up. Could we get kids? See, I don't want my daughter doing this. We don't need her to do it. She's got all the APs and everything. It's the kid, like Herb was saying, that we want them to be better prepared before they take the SAT.
The purpose was to incentivize
Yeah.
students to prepare themselves to take it, or
Who wants this project?
Don't look at me.
Everybody's getting one, so somebody
Look to
pick it.
my left, my right here. Look to my right.
I'll volunteer for you.
Okay. Do you want this one?
Are we looking at this year based on utilization?
Probably next year, but just talk to everyone, talk to people here. How should we narrow it up? How should we target with the goal of doing a full, we're going to pay for the whole thing, and we want it targeted to the kids that we want to jump through these hoops to improve their SAT. But to go back to the here and now, it looks to me like there's a whole lot of money sitting somewhere
Right now.
that we need to go talk to the conference committee for 08.
1.2.
And until we change this, we might want to scale it back for 09. Are we agreed? Sounds good to me. All right, let's go.
1.2.
Well, I don't think we can take the whole, but yeah.
Well, at least
Well,
you
we're
50,000.
taking almost all of it for 08.
But if we use 10,000, and even if it increases 4x between now and the end of the year, you still have 1.2 million on the table.
We're good. All right. Golly, that's good. You keeping a running total? All right. Next, $800,000 for web-based accountability Gainesville model.
Again, this was very similar to item number 2 on our list, in that there was a specific purpose given for this money, but of course we had to put it into more general program. Last year, we were given the same amount of money in the 08 budget. It was continued again, in the 07 budget, it was continued in the 08 budget. We created a web-based accountability model similar to the Gainesville model in 12 districts, 13 schools. We had one district that wasn't interested in it, so we gave 2 to another. We tracked it. We tracked the accountability within that, the performance within those districts. The second year, we did the same thing again. And I don't know where we are in expending those funds, but we did.
Well, if we could cut to the chase on the dollars, this program is recommended for elimination for next year.
Right.
This year's money is all obligated.
Okay.
It is obligated.
We're not interested.
Where are the results?
We have them, and we'll show them to you. I think they were mixed results, and that's why we didn't carry forward any recommendation of continuing this.
Did it replicate exactly what they're doing in Gainesville?
Yes, for the most part.
I think
Really?
it was actually open, so that was, it's sort
Wait,
of a pilot.
just let me explain. Yes, it did, but not with the same vendors, if you will. In some cases it was, in others it wasn't. Other people that were providing the data. It's basically the model built where the data was provided, the teachers had a website, in essence.
Pre-test, post-test?
Yeah, pre-test, post-test, data provided, data produced to the public. And we got good results in all those systems, but it clearly wasn't something that we wanted to recommend further expenditure on. It wasn't designed as a pilot.
Yeah.
It was designed to be seed money for a district to continue these programs, and I think most of the districts did continue going down this road.
Okay. All right. Next, graduation coaches. We modified a little bit around the edges as well as we could the graduation coach program. We said if 95% or higher graduation rate, you did not earn it. Combination middle high schools only earned 1, and these schools earned these coaches, but school systems allocated them. So, so for example, do you know what that means? I mean, if you have 5 schools, 3 earn them. You could put 2 in one school. So was the flexibility
and to
used?
answer your question to the flexibility, there were a very small number of systems that utilized the flexibility. I understand that they utilized the flexibility for their alternative schools. I guess that means they put.
I saw a list somewhere. Do I have that?
It was 30 pages.
Less than
We have.
But it didn't look like. I counted.
A
less
few
than
that had
5,
one.
like
Yeah.
a handful.
So basically,
2 to
no.
5.
I mean, basically no.
no.
No. So what that means is that I don't know if is this the new one? I don't know if I've handed this out. This is. I'll just start over there. The new. I call it. I guess I don't even non-graduation rate for these schools. For every school in the state, every high school.
4-year cumulative.
So we have high schools that have over 1,000 students that if you walked in the school today, based on their enrollment and their graduation rate, there are over 1,000 that we pretty much know are not going to graduate on time. There are other schools in which it's a handful, 25 kids. Given that incredible disparity, less than 5 schools, or probably 2 or 3 school systems, exercised 1 iota of flexibility in saying, you know what, maybe we ought to put 3 in Meadow Creek and none in this high school, so it didn't work. So which means if we ever allocate any more graduation coaches, we'll be a little more directed about it.
I would submit to you that the systems that have those big numbers, all the schools in the system tend to be alike.
No.
I mean, I don't know there's a lot of schools in, well, I don't want to overgeneralize. I see a lot of shaking heads up there. I would submit to you, in Gwinnett County, there's not a lot of schools that have 25 kids that are at risk. There's tend to be large schools that, and the notion that you would have one school with 400 kids at risk and another school with 1,000 kids at risk, it doesn't seem as rational that you would unassign one here and put them there. It seems to be the smaller schools that don't have as many options to reassign. The smaller districts that wouldn't have as many options to reassign, they can't do that.
I think you make a very, that is definitely true to some degree, but that is definitely not true in every system, or I would even say many. I mean, it does vary. I can just look at my own school system, Fulton County. There are tremendous variations between some of the high schools and middle schools, but yet they allocated them equally.
In graduation rates, but if you look at the absolute number of kids that are at risk, you might have a school with 91% graduation that would have 200 kids at risk. Other schools that have 150 kids at risk who still feel like the 150 kids at risk are worthy of having a graduation coach assigned against. So the decision to if you get into it, I don't know that it's as irrational as it might seem.
There, you would definitely have expected more variation. I'll do a further analysis of that just to kind of show you. But there are large schools in Fulton County that have a 98% graduation rate, 97%, 96%, and there are large high schools in Fulton County that have a very low graduation rate. And I would have expected there to be more variation there. That is also true for the middle schools, because we didn't have enough sufficient time to really come up with a way to massage that, but you would have expected there to be, particularly in the Cobbs, the Gwinnett's, and the Fultons, where you have a lot of high schools. You were right, in some of these school systems there's not a lot of difference, but there were some. But you're right, I'll do a little more analysis of that.
I was just saying that with respect to the first graduation. I think when you start assigning two to a school, then it starts to break down and it makes sense. You don't parcel them out on a school-to-school basis.
Yeah.
For the first coach, I think most schools use the first coach, is all I'm saying.
Well, I don't know about that when you look at the numbers of how many, some of these schools, I mean, here's one, Bremen High School has 30, well, I realize that's their only high school, but they have 35 students that we could project today probably won't graduate. But they, what I'll do is group them together by counties, and then you'll know like that, or by school system.
And I was just saying,
Yeah, but they only have one school.
I realize they do, so that's not a good one
Bremen
to
High
use.
School wouldn't tend to have a school with 1,000 kids who were.
Right. That's right. So, but you know what it says? You make a good point. It shows two things. One, it worked on both ends. We probably should have targeted a little better than just saying everybody gets one, for the most part, or earns it.
Certainly for the second graduation thing that we do, it makes sense to.
Yeah. But I would have expected still more of a variation between, I look at Wheeler High School, for example, where my husband graduated in Cobb County, has 422 that fit, that criteria. And then I can sure wait back here, I'll find Walton High School, which would only have a handful. I would have thought Wheeler would get 2. Because, we had the governor meet with us, and he said he actually thought a caseload would be no more than 100.
Yeah. Would Walton have met the criteria of being above?
That I don't, may not have. It may not have. Yeah. May
Madam
not
Chair,
have.
if I may, and
It did not.
I agree, it is disappointing that the flexibility didn't rebalance, but I do want to point out just firstly that the graduation coach program has been exceptional.
Absolutely.
Everyone that has a graduation coach has really we believe there's demonstrable performance there.
Right.
Secondly, it was a new program. There were questions about whether T&E was going to be funded. It has been. It's been rolled into the middle school. The point being, in fairness to some of these systems, their focus has really been on setting up the program overall, establishing, going out and finding a graduation coach. Firstly, understanding what it had to be, because we didn't quite know until pretty late in the game what would qualify. And then secondly, having to train them, and then of course moving into the middle school. So they've been expending, I think, a lot of energy on setting these programs up, and we believe they've done an exceptional job of it.
Thank you.
We do think the flexibility is good, and I believe that they will use it.
But I would direct it more myself next time. And because I'm thinking back, Representative Setzler, it was the middle schools where I expected them to exercise the flexibility. So when I walked into my son's middle school this year in the fall for a little parent orientation, one of the folks who introduced herself was the new graduation coach. and this is a very high-performing middle school. I would have fully expected that graduation coach slot to have been at a high school in Fulton County that clearly could demonstrate a greater need.
Well, you just look at Atlanta. You got like Mays High School in Northside, who are in the 90s, and then you got a school like Carver that has twice as many at-risk kids as those two.
That's right. Right.
And they have one each. That
Right.
makes no sense to me.
Right.
You got almost 600 kids in one school. The others have 300 combined.
Right.
And they got the same amount. That makes no sense.
All right, so we'll think about it and maybe relook at that. Who wants to take on graduation coach? You will? All right, thanks. Just think of the questions we raised and maybe how do we want to rethink this for next year. Given that I'm fully in support of this program, I'd double if I could.
It's a tremendous program.
Yeah.
Improving flexibility is great, but
I just want to make sure we're getting the bang for the buck.
Right.
Because as great as it's been, that's very disappointing to me. It could have been greater.
And just to point out, what you're utilizing data.
I am
from
actually
our-
now using, this is 07. Yeah.
We developed a work management system for our grad coaches so that we are now tracking our students by student ID linked back to the
good.
teacher. So we'll be able to provide Representative England with some very, what we hope is some very direct and individual performance on this. Right, we're going to look and see how each graduation coach affected the graduation rate in their school.
Perfect.
So we'll be able to
Can
provide
we
that.
get nomination, this is too bureaucratic, Ms. Tillman, can we get school districts to propose how they would use additional graduation coaches before we go through the budget
We can
process
do
next
that.
year? So we can look at, they've got a plan to really thought this through, so if we're the appropriating it.
Our program, we can work with, directly with when we train our graduation coaches. We can also do a survey of the schools if you'd like and get some individual input from school leaders on how they work.
We're bumping up against another meeting here that some of us need to go to. Let's move on to the last one. $1 million SAT prep online practice test. Is it an all or nothing? Can you cut the amount and are kids using it?
Right now, it's a contract we've negotiated, and it's set for $1 million to cover as many seats as we could probably fill, 62,000 seats or something like that.
Yeah. And
We have to renegotiate the contract.
And do we know how many kids? Is there a way to know how many are utilizing it?
We can check. They do track those numbers. They do.
we can certainly get you the usage. It is fixed, to answer your question, it is fixed cost. Just as a reminder, the vendor did allow private school kids to be added even after they had already bid the 5-year contract. So
Can we know, or my focus is public school, are public school students using it, but then as a secondary, can we know how many private school students are utilizing
we
it?
do get that information from College Board.
Do we know how often they use it, or do we only know if they actually got a user ID?
Actually, they can tell you how often they use it.
So, wouldn't y'all like to know how many hours of usage did we get out of this?
Yeah.
Or, at least an approximation.
I just got to call.
Anything else? All right, I'm going to adjourn. Thank you.
No, I actually just want to know. I'm actually just
I do too.
But, you have a list?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Contract list? Thank you.
This is good. We're doing good.
Aren't we doing some good stuff?
I think so.
We found some money today.
We have it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Found some money, didn't we?
Is it like the one that's got the shaded yellow and so forth?
Are you still going to be able to get us the grant information?
That's some real money. Over $2 million.
We're doing that now.
Right?
Back up.
Just ask a couple questions and.
Usage information so far. Of course, it's the same thing, SAT, most kids start practicing before
That's just a count, so what I'd like to know is,
We have it.
That's what he told me.
okay, that's a start, but I'd like to know, just because you have an account, doesn't mean Doug's got it.
Well, yes, I just wanted to make sure that we can make that manageable. We were a little
That's
worried.
good, isn't it?
Yep.
But we talked to Senator.
You gotta go to another meeting.
Well,
Yes.
I asked.
I'm just gonna meet with
Jeff
Ben.
He said he has a line-by-line.
See if you want me to
And I-
come with you and help you.
I'm gonna go meet with him. I'm gonna
Okay.
tell her what she's gotta go do is get those
Well, I have
changes
one,
to. I'm scared to death they'll settle on the budget. We just found, how much did we find for the 07?
$2.22 million.
I probably won't get a
For
chance
both.
to look at it.
No, it wasn't.
I've got the numbers.
Yeah, it's,
That's fine. I don't plan on being here tomorrow.
That's the 08 and that's the 09.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just, well, I figure we'll do this after the session.
I've got an attorney.
no, they
Wait
met
a
this
minute, we
morning for a
don't
little
wanna
bit, talked
take all of
about
it
Fenders
right
have
now.
not been
We
back.
wanna leave more
I
light.
was here at 10 for that one, so.
We've used 10,000 of that.
They've not
I've got
come back.
50,000 on the table there and 50,000 on the table there. We've only used 10,000 this year.
I'll
Yeah.
put together a whole
Yeah, 'cause that
leave a
would be
little bit more for 09.
I mean, you might assume some.
I'd say leave 50.
Let's say
A couple 100,000.
Leave 50.
It doubled from 10,000 to 20,000.
Reason stuff. I say, get
This,
something
we've spent
to
10, this shows
May
50.
1.
I mean, we could leave 100.
I'm just giving you the last.
It could go up to 10.
Yeah, all I'm saying is don't leave too much on the table, leave a little bit on the table. I mean, a little bit.
What you've got here is, this should be
Oh, okay, I know.
1.24.
But we're leaving May 18th.
Is what
Okay.
it's- I've got,
Well, I can't
you can
speak on
multiply 5 times just this year and you still
We
have
did a direct
money.
flight to Johannesburg.
Be fine, you know.
I stepped about
See?
that.
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
can't,
Well, now, right here,
right
we're not gonna do that again.
Yeah, we'll
We've got
leave a little more.
14 hours.
So,
That's the plan, because I need to get stuff in.
Let's go. I'm wrong with you. You're gonna go put that in.
Jen, when are we gonna vote on this? This whole no budget piece.
Yeah, if they're identical, then I only need one.
No,
As a model.
What we'll do is we'll do a
Yeah.
summary.
Yeah, that's
We're
good.
gonna have
And then I'll
vice chair
probably
meeting
maybe
tomorrow.
look at some of the details. We'll just start out. Okay, thanks a lot.
We got some money, buddy.
Yeah, this is
right.
interesting. I knew they'd always lap some back to us. They always did.
I want her to run down and get that to the conference committee, because that's some more money. And then, just help me. Because I want austerity cuts and I want to add, you know, we're in the, we're doing math curriculum out there. We need that, don't you think?
Yeah.
I thought we just funded it, shouldn't we? We haven't funded it
Oh,
just
yeah,
now.
just now and that.
And we're pushing back those one-time needs to
Yeah,
08.
yeah, we're gonna spend some one-time money. You know,
It's the way money we've saved.
there were a few errors and things, just sewer thing. Right? All right, it's good. All right, thanks, y'all.
All right, well, I guess I'll see you next week.